they fulfill their desires. Set to waste of existence.
Anxious Earth is rising. Anxious Earth is rising. I'm so happy.
We spend our life searching for this sense of belonging. Some people die before they fulfill their desires. Such a waste of existence.
Oh, hey, Double Tribble. This is Double Tribble channel. Welcome. This is a live stream of the Twitch channel. It's July 16th already. It's 11:15 here in the East Coast. And if I did my, if I got my time set correctly, it should be 4 hours ahead. Yeah, there we go. 3:16 UTC. So, all right. All right, my little thing here is saying I'm still offline, so I'm not sure, but I know I'm not. So I don't understand. Let me refresh my thing here. Maybe that's what I need to do. I want to make sure I'm actually broadcasting. I mean, I hear myself in the other room there. Let me check here. Let me check on my other computer, make sure I am on the air. Yes, it says I'm on the air, so I don't know. There we go. Okay, now it's doing it on this one too. All this technical stuff. Technical. Yeah, if you're watching this on a VOD somewhere, this is a live thing, right? It's, you know, it's kind of scuff. I make a lot of mistakes, do a lot of stuff, you know. It's not like an edited down video that you can just, you know, watch in 3 minutes or whatever. It's going to probably be an hour or so, at least, stream. So if you clicked on this, if you're on YouTube or something and you clicked on this, expecting to see whatever the title says, it's going to be buried in the middle of this video somewhere. But the cool thing is that a lot of stuff that I talk about, you don't hear. It's hard to find out the information I talk about. So it's worth it. It's worth, you know, scrubbing the video and finding the little nuggets that you're looking for. Sometimes if it's, you know, if I have time or whatever, I'll edit down the video and put it out on KXQE. KXQE. I got kxque.com, which I haven't put videos up on yet, but I also have KXQE channel on YouTube. So if you want to see edited videos that I've done, you can go to KXQE. If you're watching this video here, it's just a VOD. It's just a recording of the whole live stream that I upload onto doubletribble-yt or something on YouTube. All right, so today I wanted to talk about N95 masks being used to help protect from smoke. I mentioned somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but I remember I mentioned that N95 masks can protect you from smoke, and I'm not sure, but I thought that I got a reaction, like some incredulity from people who didn't understand or didn't know that. So I thought, oh well, okay, I'll do a whole stream on this to explain it to folks, so people know that you that you can protect yourself from smoke with an N95 mask. Partially, I mean, there's a lot of caveats there, which I'll get into. And I also want to talk about AI. Last stream I talked about AI, good portion of the stream, and I've gotten into a little bit more. There were some. I just kind of touched on some things that I hadn't researched myself yet completely, so I did that. I've researched them, and so I want to talk about that. Let me get my N95 mask out here so we can talk about that. I got a couple different ones here. Do it that way. Oh shit! I dropped my thing here. Yeah, this is I'm on Twitch, so if you're familiar with Twitch, a lot of swearing on Twitch, and so I try to blend in, when in Rome, all that kind of stuff. So I try to at least, a couple times during the stream, I'll try to say an F word or swear or whatever, just so the young people think that I'm, I don't know how I do it. I just do it. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes I forget to say the swear words. But whatever. If you're not used to that, I don't do it a lot, but it's in there. So don't be surprised if you hear an F word or an S word or a whatever word that might hurt your virgin ears. Okay. So if you're not, N95 is just a designation. A long time ago, back in the 70s, they started coming out. For a long, go way back. They knew that masks would protect you from stuff. Even before they knew what germs were, they knew that masks protected against germs, against illness and stuff like that. But back in the 70s, they used masks in coal mines, because people would go down into coal mines. All the coal, which is carbon, would get in the air. They'd breathe it in. They'd get diseases in their lungs, and they knew to wear masks to try to protect against that. And there are all kinds of different types of masks. So there are the surgical masks that are just a piece of cloth. There are cloth masks. Lots of different kinds of masks, and they filter differently, and a lot of them filter better than others. And this N95 is one of them that filters better than the other ones because of the way that it does do its filtering. When you think about filtering, a lot of times you think about like a calendar or a colander that would filter out. The water goes through and it filters, or a screen. If you think of a screen, you put a bunch of dirt on top of a screen and you shake it, and the powdered dirt will fall through, and then the rocks get filtered out. That's one type of filtering, but that's not how an N95 works. A lot of times you'll hear people say, "Oh, the mask you can't filter because it's, especially when we're talking about diseases like viruses, real small things." Then they say, "Well, you can't filter it out because it's too small," But it doesn't filter out that way. The way an N95 filters out is with electrostatic. Let me see if I can find a page here about electrostatic stuff. Let's see here. I'll find a Wikipedia page on electrostatic, and then you can see electrostatics charges. Yeah, there we go. All right, let me bring that up here. All right, there's the Wikipedia page on electrostatics. Can you see that? Yeah. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Erase my thing here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. There we are. All right. Let me see how that looks here. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. All right. So here's the cat, right? You may have seen this picture of the little kitty. Obviously, it's a picture that tells a story. Right? The cat got into the packing material of a box, and the little peanuts, packing peanuts, they have one type of charge, and the fur of the cat has another kind of charge. So opposite charges attract, and so it sticks to the cat. That's how, and this is exactly how an N95 mask works. An N95 mask uses it's called melt blown fabric. Let's see. I think I have it. Yeah, I've got that here. Melt blown fabric. Melt blown fabric is it's a way of producing fabric. Most like cloth, right? Normal cloth. It's spun. You spin fibers together, and then you weave them together, and all this kind of stuff. Melt blown is a non-woven type of fabric, and it's made usually from polymers like plastics. And they have this machine here that it melts the plastic, and then it puts the plastic under high pressure, and the plastic squirts out of these very tiny little holes, whole bunch of tiny little holes. So it squirts. It's like a little teeny squirt guns that squirt out the plastic, but it's very fine little holes. And then they use air. They blow air onto the little strings of plastic that are squirting out of the holes, and that stretches the fibers. And when they stretch, they get even smaller, and they get really tiny fibers that way. And then they lay all those fibers down on top of each other, and they just kind of land in random orientations all over in many layers, and that's makes a melt blown fabric. And then they take those fabrics, and they take sometimes multiple layers of those things, and put them into the mask, into the N95 mask. And I think I've got an N95 here somewhere too. N95 page. Yeah. So they take all those and layer them, layer upon layer upon layer. Let's see if maybe they have a picture of that here. Yeah, here it is. So here are the tiny little fibers. I think these are like salt crystals, probably. That's what they use usually when they're testing the N95 mask, is a little salt crystal that you can control the size of very easily. But these little fibers are tiny, tiny, tiny. And what happens is these are actually very big crystals. That the particles that are smaller than these little gaps here will still get stuck, because what happens is a little teeny particle, much smaller than these big salt particles, would normally pass through a filter, right? So, like, say this opening here, I don't know what the size of this opening is. It's probably, a few microns maybe. But if you take a particle that's, say, half of a micron, it would normally just go right through that hole, right? But because there's an electrostatic charge on these fibers, and particles generally are either charged, or they have when they are put in the presence of a charge, they will become charged. They will become asymmetric, so that one side has a plus and one side has a minus, and they stick. So it's the same way like you get dust on your stuff, your furniture or whatever around. That's all electrostatic. That's electrostatic charge, just like our friend here, the little cat, right? The particles come by, they get attracted to those fibers, and they stick to them, and they stick to those little fibers. So that's what happens. You could, even if you keep using a mask, it'll still continue to the particles will still continue to stick to there, even once this gets coated with coated with particles. These fibers here get coated with particles. It'll still continue to attract other particles, because those particles have become charged too. They become asymmetrically charged, and then the next particle will stick to that particle, and they form what's called dendrites of particles on there. And what that actually does is it makes these little holes here even smaller, and it actually, the effectiveness of an N95 mask will actually go up over time. Believe it or not, the effectiveness of an N95 mask will actually go up over time. Hang on just a second here. Let me get my thing here. I'm trying to switch here. 0. Okay. Sorry about that. There we go. So the fibers inside here, as they start getting more and more particles stuck to them, they start getting like dendrites, like roots, the root of a plant or something like that. Dendrites, they call them. And each of those will attract particles to them too. So an N95 mask, when it's first brand new, it'll have a certain effectiveness, and the effectiveness actually goes up over time. The filtration ability of an N95 will typically go up. The thing is, though, when the thing becomes unusable is when you get so many of those dendrites and so many particles in there that the little spaces in between get filled up, so that air can't get through. So that's what really makes a mask less, where the lifetime of a mask. I mean, one is the structurally, and then hygiene wise and stuff like that. But the real effectiveness of the mask is when the way the mask, you got to throw out and get a new mask, is when the mask, you can't breathe through it anymore. Basically, is what I'm saying. You get too many particles in there, and then the air can't get past too easily. Yeah, and like a brand new N95 mask is very easy to breathe through. You can exercise with it. You can do everything. It's much easier to breathe through one of these N95 masks than it is to breathe through like a cloth mask. Most cloth masks. And another important part about the N95 mask is the fit. Is that it makes a seal all around your face. You know, it's designed so that when you wear it, it'll make a seal all the way around. And you want to make sure when you're wearing the mask that it has that seal all the way around. That way air can't get in around the mask. You know what I'm saying? The air won't get in around this. And if you have hair, you know, if you're a person who has facial hair, that will can allow air to pass around the mask. So you don't want, if you have facial hair, you got to figure out something else, because these respirators won't work if you have facial hair that interferes with making the fit of the thing. You know, if you just have a little mustache or a goatee or something like that that is completely enclosed inside of the mask, you know, and they're all different sizes and stuff and shapes and whatever, then it's okay. Or if you have facial hair outside, you know, long sideburns or something like that. But any facial hair that is around where the seal of the mask would go, that's not good. You don't want that. So yeah, if you ever see a doctor with a beard, yeah, no, that's not good. Doctors should not have beards because they're supposed to wear these masks, you know, and they should know better. So if you got a doctor with a beard, then there's something wrong there. Just saying, you know. All right. All right. So we get that. We got electrostatics. So that's how the N95 works, and it will. Let me see here. Let me just. I wanted to play this. I don't know what this is. I haven't seen this yet, but I'm gonna play this little video here just to see what it is. Let me try this here.
At a major medical center, a registered nurse cares for an undiagnosed TB patient. As a result of this exposure, she develops multi-drug-resistant tuberculosis. The nurse is forced to give up her job for 2 years and undergoes 3 years of treatment, which includes the removal of half a lung. 5 medical personnel are present during a 3-hour autopsy. Afterward, they convert from negative to positive TB skin tests.
Can you hear that?
2 of these infected workers
Hang on just a second.
develop active TB.
All right. Sorry about that. I couldn't tell if that was actually getting through or not. I don't know. This is a big long thing. I don't know if I want to watch this whole thing. Actually, I thought they were going to talk about respirators, but let me see if I can get through.
Effective drug interventions were developed, and the medical community gained valuable insight into the mechanics of TB infection and transmission. The number of TB cases in the U.S. began to decline at a rapid pace. With good reason, many believed that the war against tuberculosis was over, won at last. But more recently, the incidence of TB actually showed an increase, reversing this decades-long trend. The number of reported TB cases rose considerably from 1985 to 1992. Despite the rigorous infection control standards of today's healthcare facilities, there have been documented outbreaks of tuberculosis in modern hospitals. Many workers have developed the disease during the course of such outbreaks, and a small number have even died. Although drugs used to treat TB are usually safe and effective, they may cause side effects in some people. Some TB bacteria have become resistant to the very
Come on, I'm sorry.
special ventilation that removes bacteria from the air and infected with TB.
Here we go. Okay.
Face piece,
Now it's all right.
hood, or 9 respirators either purify is needed. The respirators.
All right, here we go.
Special protection is necessary when you are in close contact with a contagious TB patient. For these situations,
Just a note here, when a medical person, like a CDC or somebody like that, says close contact, you know, close contact. They use the word close contact. It doesn't mean touching contact. Contact means close enough to somebody that you can catch their disease. That's what contact means in medical verbiage. So when they say close contact, that doesn't mean touching someone or, you know, or being very close to it. It just means breathing in the same air as somebody else. That could be close contact. So you got to be very careful when you listen. Also, the word droplet, when you hear them use the word droplet, that doesn't mean like a drop of water that's, you know, from a sneeze or something like that. Droplet means something that's a particle that's suspended in air that could carry a virus. So you got to be careful when you listen to the words that they're saying. Okay, I'm just saying that. Just saying. All right.
very specific form of protection is needed: the respirator. A respirator is a device that protects the wearer from harmful airborne agents. Depending on design, respirators either purify or supply the air breathed by the user. A respirator can be a half mask, full face piece, hood, or helmet. When working in an environment where the air is contaminated with TB bacteria, wearing a respirator can reduce your chances of becoming infected with TB.
There are a lot of different strains out there. Just the most important thing is be careful and realize that this is an airborne, serious disease.
Your organization's Infection Control Committee or Respirator Program Administrator will determine when respirators should be worn and which employees are required to wear them. Furthermore, OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, currently requires the use of respirators whenever specific hazardous respiratory exposures can occur. OSHA further mandates that only certified respirators should be used. Respirators are certified by NIOSH, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. All certified respirators are given a certification number found on the approval label. The label also contains other important information about the features and limitations of the respirator. Make sure that you are familiar with these specifications before using the respirator. Approval information can be found on the filter, container, or instruction sheet. Respirators that protect against TB have several different designs. Some designs are better suited to certain work environments than others. A respirator that is appropriate and effective for a given situation may not be the best choice under different conditions. Although your program administrator will ultimately decide what kind of respirator should be used in a given environment, you should always be familiar with the types of respirators used for TB protection. Respirators that protect against TB fall into one of two main categories: air purifying and atmosphere supplying. There are two types of air purifying respirators. The first type of air purifying respirator is called non-powered particulate. Particulate respirators remove small particles, such as the bacteria that cause TB, from the air you breathe. This type of respirator is also known as a disposable filtering facepiece. These respirators should be promptly discarded when they begin to wear or become soiled. Some models achieve this through the use of replaceable filters, as seen here. Particulate respirators offer protection in TB isolation rooms, as well as other areas that may require respiratory protection. Whether their filters are replaceable or disposable, Non-powered particulate respirators tend to be lightweight and do not restrict mobility. They are also the lowest cost type of respirator available. However, if a particulate respirator contains an exhalation valve, it should not be used in a sterile field such as an operating room. An exhalation valve allows droplets and particles exhaled by the worker to escape, which can potentially contaminate the surgical field.
She talked about exhalation valve. I like to use ones that have exhalation valves on them because, especially in warm weather, because it allows moisture inside to escape much easier through the thing. This is an exhalation valve here. Some of them don't have that. Let's see if I have one here that doesn't have that. Like here's one that doesn't have that. It's just a regular, you breathe the air in through the mask, and then when you breathe out, your exhaled air goes out through the filter material as well. If it has one of these exhalation valves, when you breathe in, the valve doesn't bring in air through the valve. If the air comes in through the filter, but when you breathe out, this little valve in here opens up and it allows the air to go out, some of the air to go out through the valve and some of it to go out through the filter. And that just makes the mask a little bit more comfortable. And what they were saying there in the video was that if you're trying to use what they call it, source protection, in other words, if you have a disease, then and you don't want to infect other people, you don't want your germs to go out into the air, or you want to keep as many of them as possible from going out into the air, then you need to wear one of these ones that don't have an exhalation valve, so that when you exhale, your exhaled air has to go through the filter. And if you're in an environment where you got a bunch of people who you don't know who's sick and who isn't and all that kind of stuff, then it's kind of good to have these, because then you're filtering both ways, right? You're filtering, if somebody is infected, then their exhaled air gets filtered, and then when you're breathing in, your inhaled air gets filtered. So it's kind of like a double thing, you know what I'm saying? But if you're very conscientious about wearing your N95 every time you're in public all the time, like I've never had COVID ever, because I wear my mask whenever I'm around other people. So it's okay for me to have the valve, because I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to get the disease in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I just wanted, she mentioned that very briefly about the exhalation valve, and I wanted to explain that a little bit more. All right. There we go.
For if conditions warrant respiratory protection during an operation, make sure your respirator is not equipped with such a valve. Another kind of air purifying respirator is known as a PAPR, or Powered Air Purifying Respirator. These respirators use a motorized blower to pass contaminated air through a highly efficient filter. The blower is powered by a battery pack attached to the wearer, usually at the waist. The filter removes airborne contaminants and supplies purified air to a facepiece, hood, or helmet. PAPRs offer an advanced level of respiratory protection and should be used when disposable or replaceable half masks do not provide adequate protection. Your employer should perform a risk assessment at your facility to determine when the use of PAPRs may be necessary. Like other respirators, a half-mask PAPR can be worn in conjunction with a face shield for protection against body fluids. As with some non-powered particulate respirators, powered air purifying respirators should not be used during sterile procedures because they exhaust air contaminated by the user. And those are the air purifying respirators that protect against TB.
Yeah, this little video here is about they're talking about TB, right? But it's any disease, right? Or any disease that's transmitted through respiratory. I wanted to show you this one here. This is a they call it an elastomeric respirator. I don't know. I was running around here trying to find my stuff here, so I don't know if she mentioned this. This is called an elastomeric respirator. It has it makes a really good fit. You know, these face piece respirators don't always make a good fit. Like this one here wouldn't be a very good fit at all because it's kind of coriated. You know, it'll do okay, but it's not so good. This one here is a little bit better because it's got this soft thing here. They have these little metal bands usually on the front of them that you can push together, and you don't squeeze them together like this, because that'll actually open them up and make more space in there. When you fit this piece of metal around your nose, you put the thing over your nose, and then you push with your two fingers like this. You go like this, and you push with two fingers, and that will allow this metal to form around your nose, so that to reduce the amount of air that could come in around your nose, because that's a that's a point where the air will come in through. But these elastomerics, they have really good fit. You got different sizes you get and everything, and if you get the right size and everything, you can get a really good fit with these things. They also have different filters that you can get on them, and like at the height of the COVID, I wore this because I didn't want it, because there were a lot of COVID virus out there, and especially early on, we weren't sure how contagious it was, and blah blah blah. So I wore the highest thing. This is a P100 filter. These are like detachable filters, and so these are N95, right? You say N95. That just means that it's 95% efficient at removing particles in fact, they specify the size 0.3 microns, because that's the hardest size to filter. So they say if it's 95% efficient at filtering particles that are 0.3 microns, if it's 95% efficient or better, then they call it an N95. If it's 99% efficient, then it's 99 N99. And if it's 100%, or if it's 99.97% efficient, then they call it an 100 N100. And then there's also an R100, or an R95, R99, R100, and then there's a P95, P99, and P100. These are P100 cartridges for this elastomeric. And the difference between an N and a P, the N I think stands for normal, or I forget what it stands for. The P means it's for paint. It protects against oil-based particles, because the way if oil gets coated onto those little fibers, remember I showed you those little fibers, if a particle of oil-based particle gets onto those fibers, it can reduce the ability of that fiber, the electrostatic ability of that fiber to filter. So if you're doing like paint, oil-based paint, where you're spraying and it's putting all these oil particles in the air, then you got to use the P, not the N. And the P is good to have anyway. It's actually better than the N usually. So it's good to have the P anyway. But for just ordinary, if you're just out and about, going about your business at a store or whatever, and you're not in a confined space with other people, like in a car, carpooling or something like that, this will work. But if you, for like disease transmission. For smoke, the smoke particles can vary in size too, and they can get really, really small. When there's a wildfire, and it sends up the particles of smoke. Smoke is it's composed of a whole bunch of stuff. It's gases and everything, but the particulate part of it is basically just small little chunks of ash, really. And the smaller the particle, the longer it stays suspended in air. So if you're, a couple hundred miles away from a wildfire, you see that orange hue that you see in the sky, and then the sun looks red and all that. That's because those particles are small enough that they affect the way that the light gets bent, and it will bend red light more into your eye than the other colors, and that's why it looks red, because those tiny little particles are so small that they interact with the actual wavelength of the light. So it's called me scattering, M-I-E, me scattering. All right, let me go back to this little video here, and we can see what else they're talking about here. This is the first time I've seen this video myself, so that's why I'll comment just as I'm watching it here.
When it comes to atmosphere supplying respirators, there is one main type you need to know about. The positive pressure supplied air respirators should be used when greatest protection is needed. Supplied air respirators use compressed air from a stationary source. This air is delivered through a pressurized hose to a half mask or full face piece. Again, your employer will determine when this advanced form of respiratory protection is necessary.
Oh, I want to just explain. They talked about the powered respirator, which is kind of the same idea. You wear the mask and there's a hose and it comes to it. But the powered purifying respirator is basically the same. It's just like this, but it's got a really very, very, very high efficiency filter, and it brings the air through the filter at a specific rate so that it has the maximum amount of filtering, and it does that constantly at a specific rate, and then that purified air is then supplied through a hose up to your mask or whatever that you're wearing. So it's still just purifying the air. Now this one that they're talking about here, this where you have an air supply like a scuba, right? Except you're not underwater, right? It's supplied air. That is when you're in conditions where you have chemicals in the air, like carbon monoxide or something like that. Firefighters will wear those when they go into a house to rescue people. It's not just the particles of smoke, particles in the air. It's the gases also. There could be cyanide gases, carbon monoxide, all these different gases that are toxic if you're like right at the fire, in a house or something like that. So then you have to wear these like a scuba, or it's a self-contained unit that supplies air, its own air that it has stored in a tank, because these will not filter out gases. It only filters out particles. The difference is, in a gas, you've got air, right? Normal atmosphere has got mostly nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and a few other, gases in it. But when there's toxic gases like carbon monoxide or hydrogen cyanide, different gases that can come from combustion, those won't be filtered out by this, because the way gas, you think in a gas, it's a bunch of tiny little molecules that are moving around, and they're so energetic that they're no longer stuck in a liquid, they're no longer stuck in a crystal of a solid. They are completely free. They have so much energy that they're bouncing around their gas, right? The phases of matter, right? these filters will not filter out gases because they are so energetic. They're just going to bounce off of the little fibers, right, and just go right through. That's why you can breathe. That's why you can breathe with these things, because you're breathing in air and nitrogen and oxygen. And it all gets, those pass through the filter. What they filter out is the particle. So, okay, I hope that makes sense.
Whichever respirator you must wear on the job, always make sure that it is NIOSH certified. You should also be aware that a surgical mask is not a respirator. Research has shown that such masks do not effectively filter out TB bacteria and have poor fit qualities. Most respirators come in 3 sizes, and you will undergo a formal fit test to determine which respirator fits you best. A fit check is something you do yourself every time you put on a respirator. This is done to ensure that you have put it on correctly. Manufacturers' recommendations for fit checking are usually found in the packaging. Be aware that any type of facial hair, from stubble to beards, compromises the fit of a respirator. If you have facial hair, you should use a respirator that does not rely on a tight face seal, such as a hooded PAPR. For individuals with latex allergy or sensitivity, the latex seals found on many disposable respirators can cause reactions, such as rash. If you experience an allergic reaction, talk to your employer about using a latex-free respirator or one without a face seal. Your respirator will require routine cleaning, inspection, and other maintenance. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions when performing any such tasks.
On the cleaning part of it, these don't really clean. They're not. The only maintenance is like if like I've had N95s. This one's pretty well worn, as you can see. It's pretty. This one's just about ready to go. And it's got a thing. It's starting to crack here and all that kind of stuff. I can still get a good seal, so I still wear this. But like I've had respirators where they were fairly new, not ready to be thrown out yet, but the band breaks over here or something. And then I just repair it, I staple it or whatever. I do it in a way that it still works, it still holds the mask properly. It still keeps the seal and all that. So these really don't require maintenance because you just throw them away. They're designed to be disposable. In fact, they're, when you read the manufacturer's thing, they say use it once and throw it away, which is stupid. You can use these things, multiple times. These is what requires maintenance. You gotta, occasionally change out these little valves here for breathing, the exhalation valve or inhalation valves. You got to change out the filters wear out after a while, right? And you change those, and then just cleaning them up and stuff like that. This one here. I think this is the one. I've got a couple of them here. Let's see here. Okay, this is a newer one. This is a newer one I've gotten 2021. But this one here, I think I got this back in the 20th century. This is so old. I think this is my really old one, and I still use it. It still works. The still flexible, and everything. So, they last a long time. But I've since learned that. Like when I wear it in public, my main reason is for COVID. But with these wildfires, then I wore it just going outside, even if I wasn't around people. I wore it to filter the smoke from the wildfire. It's also really good for pollen. When the pollen gets really heavy around here, I'll wear this even if I'm not around people, just walking around outside and stuff, because it filters the pollen really good. So if you got allergies, if you get allergies from ragweed or whatever, or tree pollen or whatever, this helps a lot with that. The N95 helps a little bit. I've noticed that even with the N95, I can still sense it a little bit when because I get allergies from, I don't know what, ragweed probably. But even with the N95, there are still enough pollen particles that get through here that I can kind of tell. I still get a little bit of an allergic reaction. That's how sensitive you can be to pollen. But anyway, all right, let me go back to this. I want to see this. I want to see this. I've never seen this video before, so I was kind of
Manufacturers' recommendations should also be followed when it comes to disinfecting your respirator. Of course, disposable respirators cannot be disinfected and should only be assigned to one person. They should simply be discarded and replaced once they show signs of wear or soiling. While they are in use, all respirators should be stored in an area where they are protected from damage and contaminants, such as individual bins. If you have specific questions...
Oh, that's another thing. I should mention this. This respirator here, I just grabbed this out of a bag and it was all crunched up and stuff like that. I probably would not rely on this respirator because it's been crunched up a little bit. The way these guys are designed is they have fabric on the outside and on the inside, and then that melt blown material that I was telling you about earlier, that's a layer on the inside. So it's possible if this thing gets mechanically messed up, that it'll look just fine on the outside, but those little fibers, that little melt blown fabric on the inside could be damaged enough that it would let air through unfiltered. So yeah, you don't want to just crunch it up and stick it in your pocket or whatever. Make sure you treat it nice so it's not getting mechanically messed up. So this one here is what is this? This one's from Honeywell. It's still an N95, but I don't know if this, I wouldn't really trust this one after it's been messed up like that. This one here has got very strong, the way it's designed so that it doesn't get, it's like a shell almost, This one here is pretty good too. This is a 3M. It's pretty good. It can still get, it looks like it's got a little bit of a thing here, but anyway, I just wanted to mention that it can be damaged on the inside without you seeing it on the outside. I want to check chat. I've been talking all this time and I haven't really checked chat. Oh shit! I've got some people out here, but nobody's talking, so I'm good. All right. So yeah, those of you who joined recently, I'm talking about N95s and how they can help you with smoke. And then later on I'll talk about AI. But right now we're just watching this video here that I just randomly found on YouTube. So I'll continue that video and then I'll go back to talking about smoke and N95s and smoke.
About respiratory protection, you should consult your facility's program administrator. OSHA requires that a formal respirator program be in place at every facility where respiratory protection is necessary. Your employer must provide a qualified administrator to run all aspects of the program. If you experience any problems with your respirator, like discomfort or difficulty communicating with coworkers, consult your program administrator for possible solutions or alternatives. Never take it upon yourself to discontinue respirator use for any reason.
Here at the hospital, we train all of our workers here in orientation. They go through the orientation program, and we tell them all about tuberculosis, the fact that it is airborne, and that they're going to need to wear specific type of respirators. We feel that we need to be vigilant at all times, and they need to know how to wear the respirator and when to wear it.
All respirator programs are required to provide standard operating procedures in writing in the following areas: permissible practices for respirator use, respirator program administration, respirator selection, inspection of respirators, cleaning and maintenance of respirators, storage of respirators, training in respiratory protection, fit testing of respirators, respirator program evaluation, medical surveillance of respirator users. Most respiratory issues that you encounter on the job will be addressed by these policies. Should you require any additional information, contact NIOSH at 1-800-35-NIOSH. Proper respirator usage not only protects your health, but also ensures your ability to care for those who need it the most. More than just your own life may depend on it. Respiratory protection is not merely a sidebar or an add-on to your daily duties. It's just as valid and necessary as all the other safety precautions that you take every day without the slightest doubt of their importance. Respiratory protection is no different. Learn the respirator defense. Understand why it is so critical, and practice it without fail, so that you can be counted among the healthcare professionals who fought tuberculosis and won.
I want to see what the date is on this thing. Just that's why I'm playing this through here. $2000. Okay. All right. So that's done in the year 2000. Looks like. All right. So that's that thing. All right. So that was way back in the year 2000. These respirators have been around for a while. It was back in the 70s, I think, when they first started experimenting with those melt-blown respirators, you know. And like I said, it was mostly around the coal industry and mining and stuff like that. That's where OSHA was mainly involved with these respirators. OSHA, occupational safety hazard, and whatever it is, safety and health, whatever it is, whatever that stands for. But it was back in the 70s and 80s and whatever. It was mostly around the coal industry and making sure that they were, you know, people weren't getting black lung disease or whatever, they, you know, getting the particles of coal in their lungs. And then at some point, you know, they said, hey, it's kind of important that you know, TB and all that they were talking about, right? And they shifted the OSHA, the NIOSH, the group that does that certification, went under the CDC instead of under the coal industry or whatever was regulated under them. So, and then ever since then, NIOSH has been under the CDC. So something that I think is very, very interesting to note is that a lot of times you'll hear, like during the pandemic and everything, you'll hear people saying stuff like, "Oh, we didn't know that you needed to wear an N95. We thought you could just use a cloth mask. We thought that would work too, you know, blah blah blah." But no, you see that from that video there. Everybody in the healthcare industry gets trained on what an N95 is and why it works better and blah blah blah, you know, and the whole thing. So they all know that you need to wear an N95 to protect yourself from any respiratory disease or in these little tiny particles that go hundreds of miles in the air. I was going to look up how big those particles were. I looked it up a long time ago and I forgot now. Let me see if I can find it here. I found an article on smoke in the on Wikipedia. So let me that work? Did that switch over? Yeah. Here's an article on smoke. And it's particles and it's chemicals. So, you know, there's more when you're right near where the fire is, where the combustion is. You know, the fire, if it's a wildfire, a house fire, whatever's making the smoke. If you're right near to where that's happening, then the chemical part of the smoke is very important too. And then these N95s then aren't going to help you with that, right? Nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. If it's in a house, you get hydrogen cyanide, you know, just a whole bunch of these different chemicals that can come out of combustion. So an N95 is not going to help you with the chemical part of it. The N95 is going to help you with the particulate part of it. Let's see what we got. So that's very important. So if you don't want to like wear an N95 in a house for a house fire, because it'll help with the particles, but you still get the, like, carbon monoxide is the main one that kills people in a house fire. So it is visible and invisible particles of combustion. Okay. Naked eye detects particle sizes greater than 7 microns. Visible particles emitted from a fire are referred to as smoke. Invisible particles are generally referred to as gas or fumes. That's not... yeah, that's... When they say visible or invisible, I mean, you can see smoke. Like we're hundreds of miles away. We can see a haze in the air, right? You can't see the individual particles themselves, but in aggregate you can see them. So that's what they're referring to there. Really, the difference is that a gas is a state of matter where the particle is so energetic that it doesn't stick to other particles and form a liquid or a solid. It's an actual phase, you know. It's a physical phase of the matter. So, okay, toasting bread on a toaster. Let's see what else it says here. All right, I thought they would actually talk about different sizes and how far they travel and all that, but they did say the naked eye detects particle sizes greater than 7 microns. But this haze that you see up in the air, those are smaller than that. Those are really small. Let's see here. Dangers. Let's see if they get it. Corrosion. Health effects of wood smoke. There we go. There's. Yeah, they have this way that they talk about particles in the air. It's PM numbers. So PM 2.5 would be 2.5 microns. Less than that size. Let's see what this is. Does this have a sign right here? Saturation concentration? No, that's not it. Yeah, I wanted to find out what the size were of those little teeny particles that get that make that red color. It's got to be less than a micron, right? Because it's close to the size of the wavelength of the light, right? That it's interfering with. Here it is: optical scattering. A beam, a light beam is passed through the smoke. Oh yeah, it's something else. Okay. Combined optical method. No. All right. Well, that's not very good. They should have. I think I would have liked to see something in this article where they talk about particle size and how particles travel through the air and all that kind of stuff. Maybe wildfire smoke. No. That'd be 2. All right. Well, I thought I'd be able to get a little bit more in there, but sorry about that. But that's the generally, of course, the further the smoke travels in the through the air, the smaller the particle size is going to be. The smaller the particle size, the longer it stays in the air, and that's because, like a bigger particle will have more mass, and if it has more mass, then the little molecules of air that are bouncing around all the time in the air, that's what keeps it suspended, right? So if there's more mass, then it's gonna fall. It's gonna go through the air particles that are bouncing it around, and it will be less susceptible to those air particles keeping it aloft. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? That makes sense, doesn't it? You got a big honking particle, and you get these little teeny particles of air that are bouncing it all over the place. It's gonna sink through those particles faster. If it's a tiny little particle, less than a micron or whatever, that's getting hit by these energetic particles of air, molecules of air, then it will stay suspended longer. It's like that. It's like that. Remember the astronaut who did the on the moon, where he dropped the two things and they fall on all, the feather and the hammer. Remember that? And the feather and the hammer fell at the same rate because there's no air on the moon to keep the feather up. Then the feather being less mass, the air molecules hitting the feather would keep it aloft longer than the hammer because the hammer is more dense, blah blah blah, right? So so closer to where the fire is, you're going to have all different sizes of particles, and further away it will be smaller particles. So yeah, so if you're anywhere, if you're downwind of a forest fire somewhere, and it looks orange, if you got everything looks orange around you, you look up at the sun in the morning and it's red, you see a red sun. Okay, that means that the air is all around you is full of this very, very small particle smoke, and you can see a haze. Maybe you can see a haze. Maybe you don't even see the haze. But if you're in a condition like that, then you wear the N95, and it will filter out those tiny, tiny little particles, most of them, and it'll save your lungs. Because if those little particles get into your lungs, then they get deep inside there and cause all kinds of issues. They cause irritation. They can do bad things to your lungs, and then you won't be able to breathe as well. All right, so that's basically what you get. And what was I going to say? So yeah, cloth masks. If you go into a hardware store and you're trying to figure out what mask to buy, if you see something that says comfort mask, no, don't buy that. Don't get that at all. Don't get a comfort mask. You got to get one that says N95. It has to say the N95 on it. Otherwise, then there are different in different parts of the world. They have different designations. In the European standard, what is it? FFP, I think is what they call. FFP 1, 2, and 3. It's the same deal, right? I think you got to get a 2. I think a 2 is the same as an N95 or N94 or something like that. And in Asia, it's KN94, they say, or KN95. So different countries have different things. This is in the U.S. They use the N95, and I think Mexico also uses the same thing. So your regulations may vary, whatever. And then when they were also talking about fit testing. Fit testing, you don't need to do that, right? That's for those are regulations to make sure that the employers are not screwing you over, right? That's basically what that is. You just follow, like what I said, follow the manufacturer's instructions for the N95. Make sure it makes a complete seal around your face. Make sure the straps are holding it in place, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. All right, so there you go. N95 will protect you from little teeny smoke particles because of how I explained it there. It's electrostatic. It's not just a filter that filters it. All right, so let's talk about AI. I wanted to talk about AI. Let's see here. So I talked a little bit about last time about AI. And we talked about, let's see. Let me see if I can bring this up here. Well, my computer really goes slow when I'm streaming. Okay, no, not that one. That wasn't the one. AI understanding. Here we go. All right.
A few years ago on Othello GPT. So,
All right, so
this was
these guys
a model
did this,
that
okay, let's stop it for me.
another researcher,
This was
Kenneth Lee,
something that
had
was by
trained
Google.
to play the
Deepmind.
board game.
Why is this not stopping? Jesus. All right, understanding that Google dropped this little video. Google Deepmind, their AI group or whatever. They dropped this video where they're talking about the inner thoughts of AI. And this guy was mostly talking about the scratch pad. There's on the newer model, they call them frontier models, whatever. The newer models have an area they call a scratch pad that the model can use, and it's synonymous to like a scratch pad. If you wanted to solve, you want to multiply, 33 times 12 or whatever, right? That's kind of hard to do in your head. Some people can do that in their head. Most people would want to write it down on a scratch pad, and they'd write down the numbers, and they multiply this number, and then they add them together, blah, blah, right? You go through the steps, and you use a piece of paper. Or on a more complex thing, maybe you wanted to figure out how tall a building is, right? And you want to use trigonometry and all that to figure that out with the measurements. Then you'd sketch out what that would look like, and do the math and figure out how tall the building is with just by the angle and all that kind of stuff. And or if you want to do something that requires several steps, you might write down steps so you remember to do each step. So what they've done is they've taken that concept of having a scratch, like people using a scratch pad, rather than trying to keep it in their brain. The LLM's the same deal, right? It's easier for the LLM to use a scratch pad, so they made a scratch pad and made it available to the LLM, and the LLM uses that scratch pad in various ways, on its own. It figures out. The LLM says, "Oh, I can't do this in my head. I'm going to use the scratch pad," and it stores things in this little storage area called the scratch pad. And that's what this guy was talking about. He was interviewed by this woman Fry, Hannah Fry, and he's very much an engineer. He's a geek, kind of. You can tell by the way he's talking. He's very much into what he's doing, very much. And anyway, he's a very smart guy. Is what I'm trying to say here. But he was talking about the scratch pad, what I just explained. There's another thing that was come out from Anthropic that they called the J space. Let me see if I can find that. I got that here somewhere else. And that's a totally different thing. And that's what I wanted to explain a little bit more here. If I can find that. Okay. Let me put that over here. I actually got two different things here. Anthropic. Hang on just a second here. I've got to get my notes organized here so I can explain it here. Okay. Hopefully I didn't start playing a video. I think I may have started playing a video by mistake here. Anyways. No. Okay. All right. All right, so Anthropic dropped this paper on something called the J space. They had a little video. I played the video on my last stream. You can go look at it. I put the link in there. You can find it. It's you just go to Anthropic and look at Global Workspace. There's a theory in consciousness generally called the Global Workspace Theory, or Global Workspace, whatever model, something like that. And it's the idea that there's a area in the brain that kind of stuff will come into and go out of, and that's, they believe, what might be what is phenomenal consciousness, or part of what phenomenal consciousness is in humans. And what AI was able to go beyond. Oh, we got something going on. Hang on just a second. Okay, there we go. I don't know if I'm still, if it was working or not. Hang on just a second. There we go. Thank you, Memloss, for the raid. Let me see if I'm still back. Okay, good. Thank you. Great, it's working. All right. Thank you for the raid, Memloss. Did we break it? I think you did, actually. I've got dozens and dozens of tabs open and all, you know, the whole thing, right? My kid's streaming, and I could tell my computer is barely limping along here on the stream. So when you came in, it triggered the alert on the, you know how that works, right? I've got a page open that. Anyway, when you came in, it made it execute some stuff on that alert, the raid alert, on a page, on a source, and that was just enough to put it over the edge, apparently, and have it, you know, stop the stream. Good job, Mem. Yeah. Peekaboo. Welcome in, folks. Yeah, I'm talking about. I was talking about N95s and how N95 Mask can protect you from smoke, and you can go back and look. I got into all kinds of detail on that, and I thought that wasn't clear to people that you could use an N95, one of these guys here, to protect yourself from the smoke, and especially if you're far away, you know, from where the smoke is. You're way downstream from where the wildfire is. These are really good at protecting from that. But we're done with that. Now we're talking about AI. So let's see here. Just a second. I think what I should do, since we get folks in here now, I should probably do a pop-out chat, and then I can keep an eye on chat. Although it's pretty late, so I'm sure everybody's probably going to do whatever you got to do. All right, so let's see here. All right, where were we at here? AI, global AI. I'm going to get into a lot of detail here. You like detail about AI? I was talking about my last stream. I kind of briefly talked about some of these things. I talked about this guy over here at Google Deepmind who is getting into what they call the scratch pad, which is basically analogous to what we do. You know, when we got to figure out something that we can't do in our heads, we use a scratch pad. And that's what this guy was talking about, how researchers look at that scratch pad. They also call it the chain of thought sometimes. And it shows what the AI is writing down, you know, that it can't keep track of in its own head. Now, this thing that Anthropic did, they're talking about something different. They're talking about something deeper than that scratch pad. They're talking about things that the model doesn't say and doesn't even put into the scratch pad, just what it's thinking at a deeper level. And they call it the J space. And it's this area where they're able to see what the model is thinking and some of the things that the model is thinking about that it doesn't say, you know, like, you know, right. You know how it works, right? You type into your prompt into the thing, right? Tell me about what or blah, blah, blah. And then the model thinks for a little bit and then it spits out a whole bunch of text. Right, generative, right? That's the G and GPT. That's the generative part. It spits out all the text. But in order to spit out all that text, it thinks. It does all this thinking in the background, right? And some of the thinking might involve the scratch pad thing, like I was talking about, where it writes down things. But some of the thinking is like the way we do. Right? We think about things that we might not write down on a little scratch pad and we might not say or anything. We just think about it, you know? And maybe you meet somebody and they got bad breath or whatever and you think, oh God, that guy's got bad breath. But you don't say it, right? Because there's a filter there, right? You don't say that out loud. Right? There's a filter. There's a process that happens in there, and the LLMs found something that's analogous to that, and they call it the J space. And it's not something that's very easy to see. Apparently, there was a way that they could look at just one layer of the thinking. The way the neural nets work, are like layers, layer upon layer upon layer. Thinking. Peekaboo says you don't. You don't? Question mark. Oh, I'm not sure what you mean, Peekaboo. Okay. Is it stuttering for anyone else? Oh, I'm stuttering. Yeah. Oh, okay. Is it not? Oh, it stopped. Oh shit. Okay. Is it not working right? I probably have too many things open here. All right, let me close on my N95 stuff because I don't need that anymore. Static. Let's see. Sound was wonky for a minute. Okay. All right, I think I have too much stuff going. I closed a few deals here, so maybe that'll help. What is this thing here? Oh, snail. Okay, we don't need a snail. I already talked about snails last stream. I think it's getting better. Oh, good. Okay, yeah. I'm trying to close some more tabs here. So, okay, we can close this one here. That's Twitch kind of. All right, there we go. I think that's a little bit better. It did it again twice, but only briefly. Okay. All right, not sure what that's about. We're making progress. All right, let me see. I'll try to close some more stuff here. Let me go to here. Let's see. All right, do I need that? No, I don't need to talk about that. Don't need to talk about that. All right, I think I've closed a little bit more. Oh, here's something I didn't actually show. I wanted to show this before. I'm sorry, this is getting kind of chaotic here, but I wanted to show this this little thing that this little graphic that they have from the CDC or whoever. Hang on just a second. Hang on. We'll get it. There we go. I wanted to show this thing here. This is a little graphic from I think it's from the EPA. I don't know. And it talks about using respirators for smoke. And it says wet or dry paper masks and tissues will not filter out wildfire smoke. Look for respirators, masks marked NIOSH with N95 or P100. They can be found online or in hardware, blah, blah, blah. So, and this is just a very brief thing talking about it. Basically talking about all the stuff I just talked about. But I wanted to show you that there's an act, somebody's somebody in the government is actually putting out a thing talking about it. It says use a respirator only after first trying other more effective methods to avoid smoke. That includes staying indoors, blah, blah, blah. And staying indoors is not going to help you if you get the windows open, right? Like right now, I've got, I have a fan that's blowing air in here, but I put one of those big HEPA filters over the fan, so that the air that I'm blowing in to circulate through the house is being filtered before it even comes into the house. So, and sometimes I'll just run a filter, just sit it inside, kind of like this here, my old filter here, but big, right, a big box fan, and that will filter air also. Okay, so that's okay. I can close that one. All right, let's see here. Oh, here's we're going to get to this. I'll put this over here. This is one that I want to get to. All right. So they talk about this J space, and they have a tool called J plan. And the reason why they call it J space is and I knew it had to do with the tool that they use, but I didn't know the details of it. But they call it J because there's this thing called the matrix. developed by this guy called Carl Gustav, who was a mathematician. So that's where the J comes from. This guy's last name. Ultimately. So what they did is by using this very special math, they were able to look at the innards of the matrix of the neural net and basically read the LLM's mind, read the AI's mind. At least the representations that are in its mind right before it's going to say something. So, it's just like us, right? We think about a lot of things, but not everything that we think about we say. Most people. And it's good that we don't. Let's see. Oh, it's too bad. Okay, still good. Something must be a lot of memory. Oh, there is something eating up a lot of memory. Yeah, my memory is eating up here. Let's see. Okay. What can I get rid of here? Jacobian. I just got to get rid of that. What else? Vibration. Okay. What else about that later? We need to talk about that now. There's YouTube. This is general YouTube stuff. Almost swap is maxed out too. So yeah, something is using up a bunch of memory here. I'm not sure what it is. Let's see here. Hang on just a second here. I gotta tell you this is definitely a problem here. Buddhism and artificial intelligence. That's kind of interesting, but we'll come back to that later. Here's that. Animals and Buddhism. These are all different things that I've. Alright, I think it's helping a little bit. I don't need. I'm clearing out stuff here that I'm probably not going to talk about. So. Okay. Hang on just a second here. List of current U.S.